Hey guys, this is part 2 of this series on 3.7. I'm on page 295. I just had to check. So yes, this is part 2, part due if you speak Italian. All right, so what I want to do is I want to talk about factoring trinomials, but I need to get you warmed up on this. So where I want you to start, actually, this should be something you already feel familiar with doing. So basically FOIL out example 5. This will get you in a good spot for where we need to be. Pause, hit play when you're ready. Okay, so for this first one, so maybe I'll colorize everything. So I've got x times x, so that's x squared. Then I've got x times negative 5, so that's negative 5x. Then I have 3 times x, so that's 3x. And then finally I have 3 times negative 5, so that's minus 15. So there are all the pieces. And then you just add any like terms. So this is x squared minus 2x minus 15. So for the next one, if I multiply this out, this is x squared minus 2x plus 2x minus 4. So that'll be x squared minus 4. And then this last one, so 2x times 5x, that's 10x squared. 2x times 2y, that's 4xy. Negative y times 5x. Now notice that I like to put this in alphabetical order, so I always just default to that. It makes it easier when I need to collect like terms at the end. And then negative y times 2y, that's negative 2y squared. So this is x squared minus xy minus 2y squared. Okay, so that was just a little bit of a warm-up because we totally need to be able to use that for this next part. So first of all, the definition of a trinomial, which we are going to be factoring. So this is a polynomial with 3 terms. So I want to show you how to factor a trinomial. So the method that I use what's known as the guess and check or trial and error method. So I realize that that probably does not sound like the most mathematically rigorous, but go with me here. I'm a big fan of this. I know there's a lot of algorithms my students always bring up to me like, oh, there's the AC method, or there's this, I make this table, or there's like all these different ways you can factor a trinomial. And so I like this method because I think it really helps develop your numeracy skills. So what I mean by that is I really think that this is good for getting you comfortable with numbers. So this is why I really advocate for this method. It takes a little bit longer at first to learn, but is simpler than any other method. And it's very, very simple, and it's going to make you very, very comfortable with numbers. So those are 2 things that I think are very good. I personally have the memory of a hamster, so anything that has too many steps, I'm probably not going to remember it anyways, so trial and error is better for me. And then again, just having that comfort with numbers, that is one of the key things that you really want in math class. So let me show you, let's start with this. We'll just call this example A for right now. Actually, we'll just make this the only one. So let's call this x squared plus 3x plus 2. Okay, so we are going to factor this using trial and error. And even if you've seen another method in the past, maybe just go with me here for a second. Now, I want to just point out to you up above. So here we were multiplying this together, and look what we got. This is 3 terms, 1, 2, 3 terms. So this is a trinomial. So this really describes actually the general format for factoring a lot of trinomials. So I just want you to appreciate the structure here. So I've got the x times the x got me the x squared. The 3 times the negative 5 got me this negative 15. And then we had some terms in the middle that we had to collect the like terms on. So this is actually kind of a rubric or a layout, or I'm not sure what word I'm looking for here. But it's kind of the structure, that's what I'm looking for, of how we want to set these up. Okay, so really 2 things that you've got to be able to do with this. So part 1, I'll just kind of write this over here. Okay, so all you've got to think about with my trial and error method here is what 2 things multiply to make the first term. So what times what will give you x squared? Well, that's going to be x times x. So here's an x, here's an x. Those are going to be the first 2 things that you put here. And then the second part of this, so let's see, I'll grab this purple. So the only other thing that you really have to worry about with trial and error is this last term here, which for this you want to think, what two things can you multiply to make the last term? So what times what will make 2? Well, in this case, there's not really a lot of options, right? It's 2 times 1. 2 is a prime number, so it's going to be 2 and 1. So, trial and error. This is it. What two things make the first two? What two things multiply together to make the first term? What two things multiply together to make the last term? That's where you put them. So now for this guess and check, or this trial and error part, what you want to do from here is now multiply it out and see what you get. So if I multiply this out, so if I just do a little check here, so I get x times x is x squared, x times 1 is x, 2 times x is 2x, and then 2 times 1 is 2. And so then this will give me x squared plus 3x plus 2. So hey, that's exactly what we wanted, so we're good to go. Now, there's one other thing that you can actually do with this, so I will add on one little caveat. So maybe I'll call this 2a, and we will structure that. Actually, yeah, let's put this here. Sorry, I should call this 2.a. Okay, so here's the last little goal. I know I'm like totally going into a ton of detail on this, and you've probably got it, but just seriously, just listen to me for a second. This is all going somewhere, I swear. Okay, so the other part of this is, so once you figure out your answer to 2, so if this is a 1 here, so if the first term is only x squared, so it can be x squared, it can't be like 3x squared or 5x squared, but it has to be just x squared, then you can consider, okay, so the last part of this is, so if the first term is x squared, we're good here, then determine what two things multiply to the last term but add to the middle term. So in this case, what two things multiply to 2 but add to 3? So that would be 2 and 1, right? That would give you your 3, and that'll give you your 3x there. So here's kind of all the ways you can think about this. So if this is just too much for you, all you have to do is worry about 1 and 2. What do you multiply to make the first thing? What do you multiply to make the last thing? Multiply it together to check it, and you're good to go. If you want to get just slightly more sophisticated, what two things multiply to the last term and add to the middle term? Okay, so let's just do a couple of these together just to make sure you're good here. So let's say now that I've got x squared plus 7x plus 12. Okay, so again, just go with me for a moment here. I am going to go into a little bit more detail, but I really want you to understand this. There's a reason why I'm going into all this, so just be a little patient. So, all right, first things first, how do I make the x squared? So that's usually going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to be your x times your x, so there's your x squared. Now, you can think of this two ways. What two things multiply to make 12? If you just want to worry about that right now, just think of the first two things that come to mind that make 12. So I'll say 2 and 6. Now, I want you to watch what happens when I do the check here. When I do the check, I get x squared plus 2x plus 6x plus 12. And so that gives me x squared plus 8x plus 12, which is not what we needed, right? We need 7x. Now the thing about 12 though is that there's more than one way to make it, right? So I don't have to do 2 times 6, I could choose something else. So if you want to just use straight up trial and error, this is totally fine. But what will happen sometimes is exactly this. You'll get the wrong thing. But again, it's called trial and error, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so this doesn't work. So I'm just gonna kind of put this line through here just so that we don't forget. So another guess would be x plus 3 times x plus 4. And if I multiply this together, I get x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 12. So there's my x squared plus 7x plus 12. And so now we're good to go, right? So this is a totally fine method, and you will eventually get some speed with this. So if this is where you start, that's fine. Now, if you wanted to just think a little bit deeper and a little bit faster through this, what two things multiply to 12 but add to 7? That would definitely be 3 and 4, right? Now, there's one more thing I want to tell you guys about. Like I said, I really want you to understand there's a lot of stuff that goes into factoring. So the last thing is checking this in your head. So notice I keep writing this all out, but you can actually do this check in your head. So I just want to walk you through it. So I've got x times x, there's my x squared, right? So I'm good here. So here's my x squared. And then I've got the 3 times the 4, that's my 12, right? So that gets the first and the last terms. Then all you have to think through from there, I'll use this pink line here, 3 times x is 3x, and 4 times x is 4x. So just to be nice and clear, 3x plus 4x will give you 7x. So that's kind of the other way that you can think about that, and you can just kind of do that in your head. Okay, so now why don't you go ahead and do, I'll give you like 2 of these to do. So why don't you go ahead and do x squared plus 12x plus 20. And then why don't we also throw in there x squared minus 3x minus 10. Hit play when you're ready. Okay, so in setting this up, so I've got x times x, that will get me to the x squared. And then 2 things that multiply to 20 but add to 12. So 2 times 10 makes 20, and 2 plus 10 is 12. So this will be 10 and 2. And now for the other one, so just to kind of throw a wrench into things here. So now I've got 2 things that multiply, sorry, let me set this up first. So this is x times x. So now we want to think 2 things that multiply to negative 10, but add to negative 3. So things that make 10, negative 10 would be like 5 and negative 2. So let me just think about that for a second. If I do plus 5 and negative 2, what is the issue with this? I definitely get to my negative 10, right? So I've got 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. But then notice I have 5x times negative 2x. So 5x minus 2x. That gives me positive 3x, not negative 3x. So you just have to be really careful with the signs when you're doing this. And if you have to actually go through and multiply this out, just go ahead and do it. It's totally fine, right? So that is kind of the idea behind it. Now I just want to look at a few more examples, still in the same vein. So I've changed this one up a little bit. So now I've got x squared minus 25. So in the back of our mind, we can actually think of this as x squared plus 0x minus 25. So what 2 things would multiply to negative 25 but would add to 0? Maybe you want to pause and think about that for a second. So I'll get x times x still gives me that x squared. But then 2 things that would multiply to negative 25 but add to 0, well, that would be negative 5 and plus 5. So this is actually a really well-known factored form. It's called the difference of squares. So notice this is squared, and then 25 is a perfect square. And so this is kind of the setup for them. So if I wanted to try another one, maybe something like x squared minus 4. So this would be, so we've got the x's here. So 2 things that multiply to negative 4 but would add to 0. So it's going to be minus 2 and plus 2. So it's really got this very predictable format. So let me just give you a couple of these to do on your own. So pause the video and just try those 3 and then hit play when you're ready. So this will be x minus 6 and x plus 6. G will be x minus 9 and x plus 9. And then this one will be x minus 1 and x plus 1. Okay, so there's one last type of problem I just want to go through with you. So let me clear some space. Okay, so now I've got x squared plus 5xy plus 6y squared. So now you might be thinking, oh gosh, now I've got that y squared, I don't know what to do. But remember, trial and error. Just focus on the first term and the last term, and we'll figure it out. So if I'm just focusing on that first term, x times x will still get me to that x squared, so I'm good to go there. Now I just want to think about what 2 things would multiply to 6y squared. Well, to get to the y squared, so similar to how you have the x squared, you're probably just going to tack a y onto this, right? So 2 things that would multiply to 6 would be 2 and 3, except now I'm going to call it 2y and 3y. And now you can see that you can multiply this out. So let's just go ahead and do that, I guess. So this is x squared plus 2xy plus 3xy plus 6y squared, and hey, look, that will indeed get us to our original problem. So this does not really cause that much of an issue. It's just kind of there to make you think. So why don't you just try this one? Give that one a try and hit play when you're ready. Okay, so for this one, so I've got my x times my x. So now I need two things that will multiply to negative 24, but will add to positive 10. So that would be 12 and negative 2, except now once again I just have to put a y on them. So that'll give me 12xy minus 2xy, and that'll get me to that 10xy. So now what I want to do is just go to the next page, and now we're going to combine all the different types of factoring. So why don't you pause the video here and just try these 4, and this will kind of give you just a moment to really think through everything that we've talked about so far. Hit play when you're ready. Okay, so we talked about for this one, this first one, 4 terms a lot of times can indicate that you want to use grouping. So this first one will use grouping. So notice out of the first 2 terms, I will factor out x squared. So that'll leave me with x plus 2. And then out of the second 2 terms, I will factor out negative 5. So if I factor out negative 5, remember both signs will flip. And so then I can just finish factoring this as x squared minus 5 times x plus 2. Now for b here, this one has a GCF, so it looks like the GCF here will be 5xy, and then this will be y minus 5x squared, and that's as far as you can go with that one. Now for c here, first notice there's a GCF, so this will be 4 times x squared minus 4. But this is actually something that we can factor farther, so I can now factor x squared minus 4. So I bring the 4 along, and then this becomes x minus 2 and x plus 2. And then this last one is like those other examples we were just looking at. So 2 things that multiply to negative 20 but would add to negative 1. This will factor as x minus 5y and x plus 4y. And so that would be it for that one. So I think this is a good place to stop. So we'll stop here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.